The weather seems pretty nice today after that rain. The sun's trying to come out by the looks of it anyways. And with that in mind, what did I read today? How about this first one? More news about people using drones to conduct voyeurism, especially in Ontario for whatever reason with these recent news. This one here says Toronto man charged with voyeurism after drone allegedly captures women through condo windows. The alleged incident occurred on March 1st, 2025 in the area of Beverly Street and Dundas Street West in Toronto's downtown core. A Toronto Police Service spokesperson confirmed with City News that Graham Kelly, 32 of Toronto, was arrested on March 18, 2025. And it goes on to say the person's been charged for secretly observing and recording people, I guess, in terms of them expecting privacy in their private property and all that. And they're expected to appear in court in May 1st, 2025. They do talk a bit about privacy law, saying according to the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act, all drone operators must respect individuals' privacy by not capturing imagery or data in areas where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy, such as private homes, condo balconies, yards, and non-public indoor spaces. It's supposed to be like that in general. It doesn't matter what you're using, but if you're, for example, nowadays anyways, with people flying a drone, you're going to capture buildings, for example, I think it's more whether or not you're specifically targeting people, like in this instance, for what was allegedly done anyways. What I would be curious about too in this regards, when the person goes to court, does he actually have any type of relations with these people that he was filming? That would be kind of creepy if there was some kind of connection in that instance versus just someone randomly flying their drone and capturing people. And with that, more news about people using drones in war. Apparently another huge attack from Russia, as it says Russia launches another record drone attack, Ukrainian officials say. Russia fired 728 Shahed and decoy drones overnight, as well as 13 cruise and ballistic missiles, the Ukrainian Air Force said. Imagine that, 728 Shahed drones and decoy drones according to this, as well as 13 cruise and ballistic missiles. And it goes on to say the city of Lutsk, which lies in Ukraine's northwest along the border with Poland and Belarus, was the hardest hit, though 10 other regions were also struck. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, Lutsk is home to airfields used by the Ukrainian army. Cargo planes and fighter jets routinely fly over the city. Western regions in Ukraine are crucial logistical backbone in the war, as airfields and depots there receive vital foreign military aid before forwarding it to other parts of the country. Russian long-range attacks have increasingly sought to disrupt those supply corridors, so it's a strategic hit in terms of their supply chain, I guess you could say. And it was kind of interesting as people were posting images, for example, like this one, where apparently it shows you the paths of things like these Shahed drones and where they're going. That's crazy when you look at that. When I first looked at it, I just thought it was something, for example, kind of like communication lines, but apparently this is supposed to illustrate flight paths of the drones launched by Russia going over Ukraine, I guess crashing into things and so forth. Can you imagine that? All those drones flying in the area like that non-stop? Must be a terrifying time to live in those areas, huh? Especially again with no end in sight. And in terms of war, and let's just say people fighting, this was kind of interesting, as remember that story I talked about yesterday where apparently there were people in the Canadian Armed Forces who were arrested because they say they were trying to, for example, start up a group to go against like the government and so forth. Well, apparently the RCMP staff sergeant made this remark that's kind of generating controversy in terms of how do you know that the people around you are becoming, quote, extremists? For example, what are the warning signs? And they made a controversial remark saying, if you see someone who believes in more traditional values, for example, that could be a sign. And of course, people are like, what? What's that supposed to mean? So you can see first what the comment was.
What they're saying on a subject, like becoming more extremist, like, and if someone you know was very believed in equal gender rights, but all of a sudden are leaning towards like traditional values, and that might be a sign that they're becoming more extremist.
Because that brings up the thought too, in terms of trying to think of the topic critically. How do you consider someone as a, quote, extremist per se? In my personal view, an extremist, again, is someone who's extremely, I guess you could say, intolerant about another view. You don't have to agree with it and so forth, but there's a lot of people who have the mindset of, if you don't believe or follow things exactly as I do per se, then they wish all kinds of, let's just say, destruction or negativity amongst you. Then in my opinion, that is an extremist per se, or in terms of an extremist type of personality and approach. And ironically, funny enough, like they talk about this, and to my knowledge, the story about those armed forces people, how they weren't happy, I guess, during the COVID shutdowns and so forth. I mean, I hate to say it, but even during those times, just from my observation, this country was probably one of the worst when it came to, quote, extremist personalities in terms of people wishing harm and stuff amongst certain groups of people. In my opinion, it was disgusting. But in this case too, I think you have to really differentiate, for example, a, quote, extremist view versus someone who has a certain type of belief. There's a huge difference between the two. I was trying to think if there's another fun example that you could use to try to say, okay, who's an extremist and who isn't per se. Think of it kind of like using products, for example. There are people who use company products and they're fans of them. And then there's, quote, fanboys. There's a complete difference in my opinion. Those that just use a company's products because they think it's great, for example, for their use, like a camera, is just like a regular fan in my opinion. But then there's those that are so extreme where they feel the need to self-validate their purchase, for example. They'll just try to talk bad about other products, try to demean others who don't purchase the same products as them. Like, in my opinion, that's a fanboy, and that's more along the lines of an extremist. You can't just use general stuff. For example, if there's one person saying, okay, they want a camera with just the, quote, basics per se, you can't say, okay, that guy believes in something more, I don't know, traditional and basic, so they're a, quote, fanboy or slash extremist or going towards that way. That doesn't make sense in that regards, correct? It's more about how others treat and react to those who don't have the exact same beliefs per se, in my opinion anyways. See you guys later.